What's going on, Bills Mafia? Welcome into the Bills Breakdown by Chat Sports. And we have been severely lacking in the like department, so here's what I need you to do. Before we get into today's episode, smash that thumbs up button if you love free Bills coverage all off season long. The season cannot come soon enough, Bills Mafia. My name is Trace Moustakas. You can call me Moose, and welcome into the episode today where we're going to break down all the Buffalo Bills mandatory minicamp takeaways. And there were some major, kind of talking points that I wanted to hit on that, I thought were newsworthy to share with you all. And I don't really want to waste any time. Let's just get right into it, shall we? So the first thing and the first major takeaway that I have is perfect attendance. All 91 of the Bills roster players showed up at mandatory minicamp, and I thought that was pretty cool. Now, I'll explain and explore here a little bit more about that because there's a deeper dive into it. But Josh Allen looked really happy sporting his new rubber wedding band. He called marrying Haley Steinfeld one of the, most important developments in his entire life, and it was the best, part of his off-season plan, and now he's ready to get back to the work. And as I previously mentioned, all 91 players on the Bills roster showed up at minicamp, which is really cool to see because this is the time where you want everything to start gelling. Now, I will note that not all Bills players practiced, but all 91 were present at minicamp. So there were some people that ended up sitting out because of injuries. And WIVB, I thought, did a really good job of capturing kind of all of the Buffalo Bills minicamp reporting. And they said that Cole Bishop, Damar Hamlin, Joey Bosa, Cam Lewis, Connor McGovern, and KJ Hamler with linebacker Baylon Spector were held out of practice due to injuries. McDermott says that he expects everybody, all of those dudes, to be healthy by training camp. And team unity at this point in the offseason is really important. You have to have a clear goal. And you have to have an understanding of what this team is trying to accomplish. And obviously, that's winning a Super Bowl. Every single year, it feels like the Bills are right there, and then they just let it slip either to the Chiefs or to whomever. It's usually the Chiefs, though. So right now, under having guys in the locker room and on the field that understand the importance of playing together and gelling together as a team is a completely undervalued trait at this point, or, for any cohesive unit, especially on the football field. Because every single year you see guys that are like, well, I'm going to sit out because my money's not right. Or, I don't really know, I'm working out with my own personal trainer. No. Everybody understands the goal right now at Bills training camp, at mandatory minicamp, which I think is really cool. Which leads me into my next point, as I just mentioned, about guys potentially sitting out. James Cook did not sit out, and there's a little bit of an update on his contract. Obviously, he didn't want to be fined because you do hit a big-time fine of over $100,000 if you miss mandatory minicamp. If you're holding out and you're like, I'm just going to wait for my next, my money. Well, they'll hit you with the fine. So Cook said, with a cheeky grin, I will admit, this was not a, statement of vitriol. He didn't say this out of spite. He said with a smile, I like my money. That's why I'm here. Now, obviously, and it doesn't need to be said, James Cook is looking for a new contract, but the amount that he's looking for still is reported to be about $15 million per year. And I have gone on this channel saying, I don't think he's worth that. Now, I don't think that he's worth the $5 million that he's getting paid right now. I think he's worth well higher than that. But is there a world where we split that difference, where he becomes a $10 to $11 million player per year? And I think that's a very reasonable thing to, kind of expect, especially with his unbelievable season last year where he found the end zone 18 times. Now, Sean McDermott was asked about it, and he, gave the very stereotypical presidential head coach answer, which is, business is business. And at the end of the day, I know he loves this team and he loves being around our players. So I respect his decision to be here, meaning there was an opportunity or a chance that James Cook was going to sit out. But it's clear he prioritizes the monetary value of his career. And as we all should, nobody works for free, right? And when you believe that you deserve a raise, you're going to let your bosses know, and that's what he's doing right now. Now, again, I do think he deserves top 10 money. I don't think he deserves top 5 money. So I would have him right between that Ramondre Stevenson and Josh Jacobs sort of millions per year. Jacobs is making 12. I feel like that's probably on the high end. And Stevenson making 9, which I feel is on the low end. Could I see him making right between Jacobs and Aaron Jones type money, which is, $11 million per year? Absolutely. And then would you be upset if you were making the 7th most money per year of any running back? I wouldn't be, but maybe James Cook feels like that. So it feels like this is the 800th time that we're going to ask you this question here on the channel. But should the Bills pay James Cook $15 million per year? Yes or no? I say no, but I don't think it's, as low as a lot of people would have him being paid. I think he's right between $10 and $12 million per year. All right, on to our third takeaway. Joey Bosa working his way back. I know there was a lot of Bills fans that were a little bit skeptical about his ability to stay on the field, and rightly so. He has been plagued by injuries throughout the entirety of his career. But one Bills reporter came out and basically said that he was working off to the side and doing different drills because he's currently dealing with a calf injury. Now, again, a lot of red flags with Joey Bosa, not as the player, but as the player with injuries. Because when he's on the field, he's really, really damn good. And last year felt like a little bit of a lower season for Joey Bosa. He played in 14 games, which was, a pretty healthy full season, but he didn't have a very good production season. It's very low by his standards. But I still think that if you take a look at the Bills' defensive line and what Bosa brings to this defensive line, I don't foresee him having a bad season in Buffalo. I think this defensive line is too good where Bosa's going to have a lot of one-on-one matchups, and he's going to be able to exploit opposing offensive linemen. So do I think he's going to have a 10-plus sack year? No, I don't. But I do think it's between 10 and 5. I'm going to call the number 7 or 7.5, which for the one-year deal that you brought him on for is totally acceptable. So having a 7.5 or 8 sack season for the one-year deal and adding another element to this Bills defensive line, I feel like is something that Bills fans should be happy about. And I'm not worried about him being ready for week 1. If you see a video, there's a video floating around that was taken yesterday at Bills Minicamp where he's running. He's not in full pads, but he is in his uniform, and he looks fine. Like, I wouldn't say he looks 100%, but he doesn't look like he's in pain, which is the good thing. Because remember, it's June. You've got 2.5 months before the start of the NFL season. So I'm not worried about Bosa, suiting up week 1. And even if there's an issue with Bosa suiting up week 1, you're not going to be seeing him sit out for weeks at a time because this is a very minor injury. So take a deep breath, relax, and have some faith that the Bills free agent will step onto the field. All right, that leads me into my next question for you. If you think the Bills are going to have a top 10 defense this year, do me a favor, like the video. I think they will. I don't think it's going to be top 5, but I do think that you're going to be seeing somewhere between 7 and 10, probably around 9. But a top 10 defense with the offense that we put out of the field last year that only seemed to not only stay exactly where it was, but get slightly better. I think you're looking at a Super Bowl trip this year. Okay, my last takeaway was the signing of Shaq Thompson. And again, this isn't a huge splash signing considering the injuries that he's had, but this is a very nice depth rotational linebacker. It's a very underrated and undervalued signing because Shaq Thompson understands Sean McDermott's defense. He was the defensive coordinator for Shaq Thompson in Carolina when Carolina drafted him. So basically what Shaq said was Sean McDermott is one of those guys that you just want to run through a wall for. He always has the energy. He always has a positive outlook on everything, and he wants to win at the end of the day, which is the absolute truth. And look, a veteran player like Shaq Thompson can be a really nice voice in this Bills locker room. And remember, we're not talking about some schmuck that they just picked up off the street, right? This is a guy that had 4 seasons with 100-plus tackles, so he understands defensive packages, personnel, and how Sean McDermott wants to run things. So if anything, even if he doesn't see the field as much as you'd like, he could absolutely be that vocal veteran presence to the younger linebackers and tell them, hey, this is where he wants, this is where he envisions you, this is how he sees the play breaking down. So it is a very undervalued and underrated signing for the Bills. I don't think he's going to be a player that gets, 100 plus tackles. You'd be lucky if you got 50 out of him. Let's just be real. Over the last couple of seasons, like 2021 and 2022 was great, but he played in 2 games in 2023 and then 4 last year where he had 35 tackles. So is there a world where he comes in as a rotational piece and has 50 to 70 tackles? Sure. But depth is key right now for the Bills because God forbid any player go down, Shaq can step right in, barring any injuries himself, and fit the mold of what Sean McDermott is looking for precisely. So having that veteran presence that can be a vocal leader and understanding the defense leads to a very undervalued signing, and I'm glad they went out and they got him. All right, before we end today's video, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. I know it's June. I know we've been asking you to do this a bunch for us, but we are so close to our next big milestone of 5,000 subscribers. Only 190. So if we can get 20 new Bills fans to help hit that sub button, we just chip away. My name is Moose. Until next time, be cool.